Hey TCMS, this is Mrs. Martin with today's material on a day at the tracks. Now before I start, disclaimer, I am in no way advocating gambling or going to the racetracks. You know, a lot's been going on with Santa Anita and some of the news that we've received about the racetrack and horse racing. It was an assignment that we created a couple of years ago and it's still applicable to the math. So just bear with me with just an example of a real life situation requiring order and repetition. All right, so I'm going to go through this slideshow with you. I've linked the slideshow in the Schoology discussion that was posted. Feel free to go through it on your own. So let's get started. So again, we're continuing with Unit 3, and this is sort of a think about the situation to get us set up for your notes next week on order and repetition. So in the previous lesson, we weren't really worried about order when we were making things like yogurt or deciding about our clothes. It didn't matter what order those things came in. So for example, the question about the high schoolers wearing uniforms. It didn't matter if I put khaki pants on before my white shirt. Okay, it was just a white shirt chosen out of a group, the type of pants chosen out of a group, and the type of top, right? It was either a blazer or a vest or a sweater. It didn't matter what order I put those things on. We'd come out of the room, of our rooms with our outfits completed. So order didn't matter with those situations. Now we have to consider the fact that order does matter. Okay, when order didn't matter, we could use things like multiplication, principle of counting, addition, principle of counting, but now we've got to be wary of order. All right, so in this slide, I included a clip of the movie. If you haven't seen it already, I really like this movie, but it's pretty much about a famous horse that was owned by Ford, and he was really small, short legs. He was the descendant of two really great racehorses, and so they were expecting big things from him. But when he was born, they saw how stubby he was. His owners pretty much assumed that he was going to lose. Okay, he wasn't going to be a champion racehorse. He wasn't going to be a winner. His build was not good enough. Okay, he wasn't nearly as tall or as big as not only the other racehorse, not only his dad, which was a great racehorse, but also the other racehorses that were on the track with him. So pretty much his owners had given up on him. The man riding him, Red Pollard, was a jockey who was too big. Many people on the tracks assumed that, you know, for those of you who have been to the racetracks, jockeys are usually really lightweight, really compact men. So he was a guy who was a little too big to be a jockey, but worked really hard to be one anyway. So when Ford lost his family and he decided to get rid of his cars and focus on horse racing, he bought Seabiscuit because he was too small, and he hired Red, who was a jockey who was too big, and they ended up making a really, really great team, winning championships and coming back from injuries that nobody thought they'd come back from. So again, if you haven't had a chance, you definitely have time right now. Watch it. It's a great movie about not giving up, despite what other people might say about you, or despite having quite a long list of failures. These two really worked hard to make sure they became champions anyway. All right, so again, feel free to watch the clip. It was designed to watch in class so we can kind of get invested and inspired, but since we're not together in the classroom, feel free to watch it on your own. So moving on, we're concerned with the following situation. So we're going to take this virtual tour to Santa Anita racetracks, okay? And we've got the following lineup of horses. Okay, this was a race that happened, I believe 2018, I could be wrong, but here's a lineup of the 9 horses that were racing in a race at Santa Anita. Okay, and we're going to, I've made a pamphlet accessible to you, so let me go ahead and click on that. Or actually, let's look at this first. When you're looking at a pamphlet at Santa Anita, it offers you a lot of information. Okay, so here's one of the racers that will be racing in our pretend Santa Anita trip today. Okay, so first of all, it's important to note the track conditions. Okay, it's a 1 mile on turf, so they're running on grass, not in the dirt. Okay, which is sometimes important for people who are really invested in this horse racing stuff. A lot of horses have specific requirements. They just run better in the dirt or they run better in the grass. So sometimes this really affects how people are betting on the horses at the track. It's also important to kind of know who's winning and who's where on the track. So they have numbered jerseys associated with them, including a color and pattern of the jersey that's on the jockey and on the horse. Okay. When you're talking about the horses, it's often nice to know what their names are. It's not really necessary when you actually go up to place your bet, but it's nice to know who they are, especially if they're famous. It also tells you how old they are. That makes a big difference. Sometimes when they're really young, they're not experienced enough on the track. And then on the other end, if they're too old, sometimes they just can't hang anymore. So knowing their age might be important to some of you. They like to include the weight that the horse is carrying with the jockey. So that might give you kind of an idea of how heavy these men are that are riding the horses if them and all the equipment that's on the horse weighs 121 pounds altogether. You also have the jockey's name. Occasionally there are jockeys who are famous for being winners or for making their horses winners. So some people like to keep track of who's racing. And finally, we've got the odds. Okay, now the odds, I mean, we can spend an entire other unit talking about odds and probability. But really what these odds do is help people determine how much money they'd make. These are usually determined based off of who's betting, really. So if we're betting very often on a horse, the odds will go down, right? So the odds will be, if I've got 6-to-1 odds, that means I'm betting 6 out of 1 that this horse Double Touch is going to win the race. Now, if I bet $1 on Double Touch and Double Touch wins, then I'll make $6 off of my $1. Okay, so does that kind of help how odds are working? So in the same breath, if you're a big spender and you put $100 on Double Touch to win because you're just so confident that Double Touch is going to win the race, you're going to end up with $600 profit on this race if Double Touch does come in first place. So there's a whole lot going on in these pamphlets. And to be honest with you, I have gone to the racetrack and I have checked out these pamphlets, and it's a whole lot of information that doesn't, I mean, it really becomes stressful at some point. But a lot of people are really invested in this type of material, and it's a sport that requires a lot of reading. So these are just a little bit of basics. So you guys have access to the pamphlet of the race that we'll see during our next class meeting. Here it is. Okay, we've got all the racers. There's the Double Touch horse that we just analyzed a minute ago. And here are the rest of the racers that are available. Okay, and you can take some time and look through those, because the next thing I would like you to do is decide who you think will win. Okay, and this is what you're going to be posting in your discussion, because I want to keep track of who's betting on who. I would like to see which one of you actually gets the right answer. So you're going to pick your winners. Okay, and to be specific, we're going to be looking at something called a trifecta, which means you get to pick a horse that's going to win. That means first place. You have to pick a horse that's going to place, which means second place. And you're going to pick a horse that's going to show, which corresponds to third place. So you're picking first, second, and third. Okay, so you're going to pick your top 3 horses. And then I want you to box it. So when you're at the track, you have the option to box your bet. Okay, and when you box, that means that you're pretty much allowing them to take into consideration all the possible combinations of your top 3 horses. Now, you don't make as much money off of a box trifecta as if you were to actually bet on first, second, and third place flat, but a box does give you the opportunity to kind of have some wiggle room. If first and second don't come in the way you wanted them to and they kind of swap places, you don't necessarily lose. You'll make a little bit of money off of that bet. Okay, so in Schoology, I would like you to pick your winner. So for example, let's say I was gambling and betting on horse 1, 2, and 3 to win. Okay, so I have the following options. Okay, the following results could happen at the end of the race. Okay, first, horse number 1 could come in first, horse number 2 could come in first. It's possible that horse number 3 could come in first. Okay, and notice a few things. First of all, the order matters, right? Depending on our odds, a horse with very high odds, I would get more money off of that horse if that horse wins. So order matters. Okay, you guys know that. First place is not the same as second place. Okay, it's also the case where we don't have anything repeating. If horse number 1 comes in first, it can't come in second as well, right? That's kind of obvious. So we're worried about order, we're worried about repetition, and this is what I'd like you to post in our discussion. So take some time, go onto Schoology in our discussion and post the 3 horses that you think will win and all the possible orders they could come in, right? So take a minute to look at the pamphlet, really make an educated guess as to who might win the race. For our next class meeting, I'll post the video of who actually wins and we'll announce who the winner is. So have fun with this, okay? It's definitely related to our combinatorics and it's gonna help set us up for order and repetition. But with us being at home, take some time, do a little bit of research, and have a little bit of fun trying to think about who might win and what possibilities might exist for those winners. So thank you for tuning in as always. Continue to be safe, and I hope to hear from you all soon. Good luck with this.